Hey, what's up guys? It's Matt from RC Overload, and today we're going to show you guys how to upgrade the power in your 1/18 scale Gelande II with a dual motor setup. So as most of you guys know, the 1/18 scale Gelande II is an awesome little microcrawler. However, it is lacking when it comes to its motor. The motor in it is extremely weak, to the point that you can pretty much only run it on a flat surface if you really want to have any fun. You can't do much for crawling with it. And I know a lot of you guys want to do that because of its scale appearance. So after scouring the internet and doing a little bit of research, there was numerous ways that you could swap out the motor in this. However, I came across this setup, a dual motor setup for the 1/18 scale Gelande II. Yes, two motors, each drive its own individual drive shaft. But we'll get into more of that here in a second. What I wanted to show you real quick was how well this actually works. Check this out. So this dual brushed motor setup is made by KD Models. You can find him on eBay. He's got his own little store there with a whole bunch of other accessories for the 1/18 scale Gelande II, which I picked up as well, and you guys will check those out here in another video. But this is nothing more than two brushed motors in opposite direction hooked up to either the front or rear drive shafts. So they individually power the front or rear. Now it's just hooked up in a parallel setup straight to the stock ESC. The stock ESC is capable of handling the dual motor setup without any issues. I've been running it for quite some time, last night and this morning before the filming. And the ESC does not get hot, the battery does not get hot, and neither do the motors. So it's a great setup. Now overall, there isn't much top speed to it, but there is a lot of low-end torque to the wheels, which is great for crawling. Now I know sometimes you want the higher speed for certain obstacles, but I mean overall for a 1/18 scale crawler, this is a huge improvement over the stock setup. Now this all comes together as a kit and comes with everything that you need except for the wires, which we'll get into that here in a minute because I'm going to show you guys exactly how to install this and how to make it work perfectly for you. Alright, so when you open up the package, the first thing you're going to find is a set of instructions that will walk you through everything that I'm about to show you. You're also going to find two motors with their gear reduction units already pre-installed, a bag of hardware that you're going to need for later on, and the mount for the dual motor setup. The first thing that we need to do is disconnect everything out of the old Gelande. Start by removing the 4 screws on both sides of the gearbox setup. After you remove those 4 screws, it should just easily slide right out. Now we need to take off the drive shaft ends. Simply remove the O-ring that's holding the pin in place, push the pin out, and slide the drive shaft end off of the gearbox. Now it's time to install the dual motor setup into the brace itself. Now this is really easy because the gearbox reduction unit is already pre-installed onto the motor, so all you have to do is slide it in place and bolt it down. Now you don't need to over tighten the screws, just snug is all that is required. Once you've installed the drive shaft ends onto the new motors, it should look something like this. Now we're on to the wiring. This is where things can get a little tricky for some. Even myself, I had a little dyslexic moment going on there. But when it comes to wiring, we're going to hook these up simply in a parallel setup. Now this is where things can get a little tricky for some. Even myself, I had a little dyslexic moment going on there. But when it comes to wiring, we're going to hook these up simply in a parallel setup. Now this is where things can get a little tricky for some. Even myself, I had a little dyslexic moment going on there. But when it comes to wiring, we're going to hook these up simply in a parallel setup. 2 wires coming off of one motor and 2 wires coming off of another are going to hook up right to the ESC. Now, the wire coming off the ESC, as you can see here, I've simply cut off the original motor because we're going to just reuse that wire to hook up these 2 new motors together. Now, I did also come up with my own little connection here because I have some extra wires that I had laying around, and I was able to come up with this cool little setup using stock servo connectors. However, you don't need to do that. You just need to simply take the positive wires from both motors and hook them up to the positive wire coming off the ESC. And same with the ground wires, or negative wires. Negatives all to negatives, positive all to positives. However, this is where it gets a little tricky. Figuring out which wires need to go to what terminals on the motor. Basically, all you need to do is hook them up in a parallel setup. However, one of the motors needs to be in a reverse polarity. So you're going to hook up one of the wires correctly, positive to positive, which you can tell again by the positive symbol on the back side of both these motors, while negative to negative on that motor. The other one, positive will need to go to negative and negative will need to go to positive. That way they both spin the drive shafts in the same direction, even though they are reversed. Hopefully that makes sense. After you've hooked it up, as a little tip, after you've hooked it up, if the car is driving in reverse when you give it gas, all you need to do is simply take your remote and hit the reversing throttle switch. Now your car should go forward when you give it forward throttle and reverse when you give it reverse. Now the last things that we need to do is uninstall the 4 lower links. Start by removing the screws and the bolts that hold them in place. You need to do this in order to install the mount onto the frame itself. As you're going to see on the new mount, it is shaped exactly like the frame itself, using the old bolt holes. Slide the mount onto the frame and line up the holes and re-bolt everything back into place and reinstall the drive shafts as well. Once you've done that, tidy up your wiring and you should be all set. Not a bad little setup. Alright guys, well that's it for now. If you guys have any questions regarding what you guys saw today, feel free to leave me a comment in the comment box below. Again, I will leave all the information to KD Models in the description box. Feel free to check all that out. Like I said, he's got a bunch of cool stuff in there, and I picked up a couple of them to add some extra little details to this. Alright, that's it for now you guys. I'll see you on the next RC Overload. Later!